Hi all and welcome to another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and tonight is October the 26th. Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and oh dear. The usual in store for this evening, news from around the world and a little bit of intel. People in the UK need to listen up for that intel because it's going to affect you big time. So we'll have more on that later. The first song I played, and I also did a post that some found to be rather cryptic. It's that's an irony in itself, but it wasn't meant to be cryptic. But what I'm seeing is I'm being reported to. Members contact me with their various queries and concerns, and on some occasions what's going on within their life currently. And what I'm seeing is chaos. It's just the way things are at the moment. I don't expect it to get better anytime soon. I think it's actually going to get worse before it gets better. And the first song, Blurry, that's kind of the way everything is at the moment. Everything is blurry. Politics is blurry. You don't know which side's which. FBI's blurry. We don't know which side is which. CIA, blurry. Pentagon, blurry. And the people are blurry. We don't know who's coming, who's going, who's real, who's not. Who's genuine. Who has integrity or not. And this is was kind of forecast last year. Also, you'll remember me stating this was the year of the unravelling and the masks of illusion would come down. And I think we've all seen that and more this year. But a couple of the lines in that song, Blurry, everything's so blurry and everyone's so fake and everybody's empty and everything is so messed up. I think we can all resonate with that at this time. And a line further down, everyone is changing and there's none left that's real. And again, I think that's been prevalent recently in the alternative media, in politics, mainstream media, and amongst the members. You know, there's many of you who are going through issues with loved ones and close family. It's a chaotic time for various reasons. Some are completely losing it. Again, this was forecast. Does it make sense? Not really. But when you're carrying the guilt that we, as the sin eaters, have done over numbers of years, depending on how long you've been researching, or awake as we call it, then everything gets too much. And this was the fear of disclosure. It was mentioned again a few years back. Whilst it would be fun in some aspects, there's large portions of it that's not fun. Because we're not hearing happy disclosure. None of it's happy news. It is, in some aspects, the end result. But what leads up to it and what took place before it is certainly not pleasant. Pedophilia is no longer a conspiracy theory. It was fact all along. We knew it, they knew it, and now more and more of the public know it. Of course, they have to face two different agendas. One, that they called it wrong, and two, they denigrated people who called it out when it was uncomfortable to do so. And that's the inner turmoil that many people are going through or witnessing at this time. It's double-edged sword. We, on the other hand, sit back and go, well, it's a case, well, we told you. We've done the research. Do we get everything right? No. Do we get a large portion of it right? Yes. 9/11's another example. It took Americans the best part of 11 years to come out of that shock. It was a psychological shock program where it got to a point where 50 to 60% are now thinking along the same lines of those who was involved in the research back in 2001 was saying this is an inside job. Of course, this week we've had the JFK papers released. It won't tell you anything that you really want to know. There'll be a few bits here and there. But to me, it's another distraction. Why release papers? Why don't you just come out and tell the truth that Bush Sr., Johnson and others were involved out of Langley? It's fairly simple. You want to give disclosure? Just out it. You're not, the people who are releasing this stuff are not telling many of us who have been researching a long time anything new. You're just telling the ones who wouldn't face it. Even the unawakened, as we call it, know something's not right by now. You'd have to be pretty stupid not to. They've been shown everything. The mainstream media have been caught lying, Clinton's being exposed, Bush's are being exposed. The list goes on and on and on. The churches are being exposed for fraud, corruption, pedophilia and rituals. Now again, that kind of pleases us because everyone likes to be proven right. But it's still not something to celebrate, is it? People have lost their lives. People have had their lives turned upside down. Whilst the masses just ignored it. They couldn't face the truth. And that's the difference between those that listen to this show and those that don't. Or don't listen to other alternative media, radio, podcasts. They can't face the truth. This country is the battlefield. I've said this many, many times. We have more clowns in this country than anywhere else. What I'm encouraged by is every time I watch something, which is not often, the movies and the TV shows that appeals to us all seem to be doing one thing: outing the CIA. The History Channel exposed the CIA for being the drug runners that they are. I mentioned this in May, I thought April or May. It was coming out in June. I watched the movie Spectral. For those of you who haven't watched it, it's all about the soul traps. And lo and behold, the CIA agent, right near the end, didn't want to destroy it. We could use it, they said. Fitting. The Blacklist. This latest episode this week also outed the CIA involved in certain crimes that took place on the show, but were eerily familiar. What's an incident in a naval base in DC? Remember the shooting a few years ago? It's more true truth than fiction, the blacklist. It explains the issues that's ongoing, the fighting between the factions, between the FBI and the CIA, and within both organisations. It exposes rogue elements of the government. It exposes the criminal gangs all over the world. That is disclosure. But it also tells you how big of an issue that we're going to be dealing with, have been dealing with, and we're going to face going into the future. It's not a light switch moment, no matter what other people in the alternative media tell you. I wish it was. I wish it was over years ago. It's not. It's still ongoing. They're still causing havoc. And we're still fighting back rather well. But it's not a light switch moment. It's going to be a number of years where certain things take place at certain times. I'm getting old, Thomas, and I don't know whether I'll see it. You've already seen it. This is where people get mistaken. They think everything's the future. Technology, disclosure is all the future. No, it's the past. We've had disclosure. We've had ET disclosure. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the plethora of shows all over the place and books written. That's disclosure. Roswell, Colonel Holt in Rendlesham Forest, to name but two. You know, we're told that we have to trust that a military person is more higher on the trust element than, say, someone who works on the shop floor, or the police is more. A police person's account is more trustworthy than others. Well, we had U.S. military come forward, Colonel Holt, and he told you there was ET craft there. And yeah, they'll twist it. Oh, it was this, it was that. No, it was what it was. And this is where everything gets kind of blurry. You know, one of the issues currently facing is, or we will face, is whether it goes on what scale it goes for violence. Because the psychopaths won't give up. The top end ones. They have no intentions of giving up. And depends how long we tolerate them not giving up. Now, certain things have been done all around the world where people have had enough in various countries, including this one, and in the UK, and started removing people. And yes, I know people want to see it all out in the public. The reality is, whether we like it or we don't, the public can't handle it. They just can't. It comes back to what I mentioned 5-10 minutes ago, dealing with the guilt. That they, A, they couldn't see it, or B, they did see it and chose to ignore it for a comfortable life. You know, let's all live in our little bubble where nothing wrong takes place in my small world. It can happen to everybody else, but as long as I'm okay, that's okay. Well, it's not. And it never was. And what's happening now is everyone's bubble's being popped, one way or the other. Whether they're exposing the lies of those around them, or exposing the lies of the self. Some of the biggest lies we ever tell is the ones we tell ourselves, because we won't face up to reality. The mask of illusion. So, if it gets to violence, which has always been a possibility, I wouldn't say it was a probability. I think there will be some incidents somewhere along the line, because they're not going to just walk out and say, oh, here's the handcuffs. Not these people. They have too much to lose. And people with too much to lose don't give up too easily. Now, to finish up why I played Blairy, imagine this scenario, that war is declared. If war's declared in America, we've got FBI fighting FBI. We've got CIA, mainly CIA 1, and parts of CIA 2, fighting the rest of 2, portion of 1, and all of 3. You've got American patriots in the Pentagon fighting anti-American. And then you add in the NSA, the DHS, Serco, Blackwater, and it all gets rather muddy, doesn't it? And blurry. A war that nobody knows which side's on which side. It's not like the olden days where the Unionists came down with the stars and stripes and the Southern had the Confederate flag, so you knew who was who, or the British with the redcoats. This is a war where you don't know whether your next door neighbour or your loved one is supportive or not. And that's why I played that song, Blairy. Because it is rather muddy and it is rather blurry. Right, let's get into the meat of the show. And I should have mentioned it. I can always give it later. Some news. Where should we start first? Why not? FBI. I think you're going to hear a lot of these news reports between that agency and Langley. And here's this one. The FBI now has decided to join the investigation into how 4 American soldiers were killed allegedly by Islamic militants in Niger 2 weeks ago, as the Pentagon and White House face growing questions about the attack. FBI officials told the Journal that the Bureau's involvement is not unusual, apparently. I would say it is. And that it has the authority to take charge of the probe, but has not yet done so. And this all becomes as the lawmakers on Capitol Hill demands answers as to how militants were able to ambush the US soldiers. No, best not. And as Trump faces scrutiny for his own handling of the aftermath of their death, the 4 Americans were killed and 2 more were injured when a group of about a dozen US soldiers and 40 Nigerian troops were ambushed during a joint patrol. The Pentagon has laid blame on self-radicalized Islamic State in Iraq and Syria affiliated militants for attack. Yeah, right. Pentagon's not far from Langley, is it? As the crow flows, or flies. Iran, next. They have done a audit. The Iranian state has done an audit, and it found the former president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, or Ahmadinejad, it's easier to say, responsible for causing as much as 1.1 billion in damages to national wealth through imports of unauthorized gasoline, as well as unsettled sales of hydrocarbon products to domestic clients. And the state audit in Iran announcing that Ahmadinejad, or Dinajad, is responsible for returning a total of 46 trillion rials, which is 1.1 billion, with each dollar at an average current market rate of 40,000 rials to the dollar, to the treasury from the revenues of the National Iranian Oil Company. However, the mechanism for doing so has not yet been specified. Maybe we need to get some of the transparency in that banking, because we'll find out who actually did that transaction and where it went to. The amount, it said, pertained to a series of cases of failures and unauthorized decisions by the former president in handling the trade activities of the Iranian oil company. Mr. Ahmadinejad is part of the cabal. All that baloney of allegedly him saying he was going to wipe Israel off the map is just that. And the department in Iran said those cases included imports of gasoline and gas oil, which is said to have been carried out beyond the country's needs and without obtaining the required authorizations from the related institutions from 2008 through to 2012. And there were other cases included in the failure of Mr. Ahmadinejad's government to receive payments from sales of condensates to petrochemical plants, as well as payments for sales of hydrocarbon products. And they received in other amounts 6 trillion rials, which is 150 million. So he's been a naughty boy, and that may be a case of things that make you go, because he's a cabal. And here's another one next door. Partner in crime, Mr. Netanyahu, says the regime this week will never abandon settlements in the Jordan Valley, which is defying international criticisms of Tel Aviv's land grab policies. The Jordan Valley will always remain a part of Israel. We will continue to settle it, invest in infrastructure and tourism, Mr. Netanyahu said during a speech at a ceremony marking 50 years of Israeli settlement building in the West Bank and the Jordan Valley area. Now over most of the length of the valley forms the border between Jordan to the east and Israeli occupied territories in the West Bank to the west. Tel Aviv occupied the region during the Six-Day War back in 1967, I think it was, and quickly began building settlements there, much to the chagrin of the rest of the world. But it seems they are able to just carry on willy-nilly, but maybe not. I'll have another story on them later. Netanyahu further described the Jordan Valley as a strategic defensive belt for Israel, saying the regime will never evacuate the settlements it has built in the occupied area, because they are of utmost security importance to Israel. Obviously not as much as security importance to the people of Israel, but there you go. And the comments came on the same day that anti-settlement monitoring group Peace Now released a new report noting that plans for 6,742 settler units have been advanced in Palestinian territories in the West Bank this year alone. Israel has been under fire by the international community, the entire international community, I might add, including its own allies, for continued construction on occupied land, which is actually forbidden under international law. Now, on Thursday, the EU said in a statement called the settlement expansion illegal under international law and detrimental to ongoing efforts towards meaningful peace talks. France also issued a strongly worded statement against Israel's plan for the construction of a further 3,000 housing units in Al-Khalil, which is Hebron, calling on Israel to reverse this decision and respect their international obligations. Furthermore, the German Foreign Ministry also called on Israel to refrain from more land grab, saying settlements are not the only obstacle to a two-state solution, and denies the Palestinians the ability to fully exercise their political rights. I think they've been carpeted over that, and maybe the UN are going to step in. Time will tell. Yes, let's do this as it rolls straight in. The United Nations has included some of Israel's biggest and international firms for blacklisting this week. The biggest Israeli and international firms operating in the West Bank of East Jerusalem and the Golan Heights for violating international law and also UN resolutions. 130 Israeli companies and 60 international corporations received warning letters from the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights about their impending inclusion on the blacklist. Interesting term. Maybe James Spader and the blacklist should go and speak to them. That would be fun. The list, which reportedly will be published in late December, includes Israel Aerospace Industries, telecom giants, international tech firms, banks, and even cafes. The Israeli Aerospace Industries, Hewlett-Packard, the Israeli branches of Motorola and HP, and the Dead Sea cosmetics firm Ahava. The Cellcom and partner telecommunications company are also among those listed, including Israel's two largest banks, the Hapoalim and the Leumi, are also said to be on the list. Now, it's not just Israeli firms, American firms are on there as well. Coca-Cola, TripAdvisor, Airbnb and Caterpillar are amongst some of the American firms. And the UN ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, this week condemned the blacklist as the latest in a long line of shameful actions taken by the United Nations. Really? Ms. Haley said that the US could withdraw from the 47-member body. You might as well. You know, I think, if memory serves me correctly, the UN has issued more sanctions against Israel for breaking international law than all the rest of the world's countries combined. And yet, it still goes on. One has to question the competency of the UN. And this is kind of what Mr. Trump said a month ago, was it? Bear in mind that 25% of the funding for UN is paid for by muggins again. the mugs called the American people. We seem to pay for everything that doesn't work or propagates war. So the UN needs to get its act together. There was a simple solution I came up with 30, 40 years ago. You pushed the Israelis back to the pre-67 Six-Day War borders and put UN troops from all nations along the wall. Take the wall down. If the Palestinians continue to fire rockets, which I'm not so sure that's all them, although if I was a Palestinian, I'd want to fire rockets as well. I'm sure everyone who listens would. If you keep getting your land destroyed and houses bulldozed, and if Israel wants to continue settlements, just sanction them. We're fond of sanctioning North Korea and sanctioning Iran and Iraq and Libya and all these people, Venezuela. Why don't we sanction a country that's committed more, broke more laws of international law than all the rest of the countries combined? Simple solution. If there's a will, there's a way. The question then, is there a will? That's the problem. Unfortunately, we've got another Israel story. Yet again, Israel authorities have destroyed or inflicted heavy damage on at least 3 educational facilities for Palestinian children in the region in the past 2 weeks. The latest of these demolitions was a brand new school paid for by the European Union, which had been constructed just 3 weeks ago at Jub el Thib, which is east of Bethlehem. However, Israeli demolition teams arrived there a couple of days ago and flattened the building, which once housed 64 elementary students from the 1st to the 4th grade. Unbelievable. And the world sits by and just watches. Mr. Trump. We for time, okay. And despite his pronouncements of Obamacare being dead, it's clearly not, where it applies to the IRS. Because there are signs that this administration is actually keeping it alive in some aspects. And the latest signal that the Affordable Care Act is still law is the IRS said this week that it is taking steps to enforce the most controversial provision, the tax penalty people face if they refuse to obtain health insurance. I'm not joking, but, one person complained this week about me referencing Germanic people, or Germans or Nazis. But that's fascism. Right in your face. And if you can't see it, then you really have a problem. This is why they continue, because you can't see it or you won't see it. But forcing the people to have health insurance and fining them, really, that's fascism. That's a dictatorship. Now, the IRS guidance makes it clear that taxpayers cannot simply ignore the Affordable Care Act While a penalty only applies to people without insurance, all taxpayers are required to say whether they have coverage or not. Legal experts say the IRS has been clear that the law was in effect despite repeated efforts by Mr. Trump and Republican lawmakers to repeal it. Congress would have to specifically repeal the mandate, they say, even if the administration has significant leeway over how aggressively it enforces it. Well, perhaps we need an executive order for that, banning the IRS from fining people. Just a stroke of the pen. There's some improvement given China's industrial march forward across the world and, large growth that's gone on in China over the past 20 years, which was deliberate as the perceived power switched from the west to the east. It hasn't took full hold, as we all know, because they didn't get their RV again. Oops. But China's doing some good things along the way, and this recently has implemented an unprecedented pollution crackdown and in the last few months as the country shuts down tens of thousands of factories. And this is part of a national effort to address China's infamous pollution and has affected wide swathes of China's manufacturing sector. In total, it's estimated that 40% of all China's factories have been shut down at some point in order to be inspected by Environmental Bureau officials. And as a result of these inspections, over 80,000 factories have been hit with fines and criminal offences as a result of their emissions. Good stuff. Now, safety officials have been moving from province to province, 30 in total so far, shutting down factories as well as electricity and gas as they inspect the factories for meeting emissions requirements. And there's always a kickback, but this has resulted in late and missed orders and increased costs, and that could ultimately result in higher prices on American shelves. Or we could just make our own instead of importing everything. Where are we? Yeah, we should make it. Mr. Weinstein, Harvey, the sacrificial lamb to the slaughter. Yes, it goes higher, and we know it goes higher. It is suspected it may not go all the way to the top. I was told this week, but we'll see. The public can change that by driving them and forcing them to out all who have been involved in it. Now, Mr. Harvey Weinstein is a fairly high up figure in some aspects, but the people in Britain are not too pleased about his indiscretions, and they've told him this week he could be stripped of his CBE. American with a nobility title? Oh dear me. And this is following allegations of sexual assault made against the Hollywood producer. CBE stands for Commander of the Order of the British Empire. Title of nobility, which means they could be thrown out of the country for treason. Was it Amendment 14? Memory serves me right. 13 or 14 anyway. And the CBE is one step below knighthood, and the removal of the honour is believed to be being actively considered by the government's Honours Forfeiture Committee for the very first time. He was awarded an honorary CBE for outstanding contribution to the British film industry. Well, he gave kids to some of his pals. That's what it smacks out to me. And BAFTA, which is another British Academy for Films, has already suspended Weinstein's membership. Why did it take someone outing him to suspend it? Like they're being all honourable. Both the CBE people and BAFTA, because they both knew it was going on. All nice little inner circle. Now, here's something that's going to be Mr. Trump's announced today about an epidemic of opioids. Not before time. But I was reading another article this week detailing it, and it was highlighting how bad the opioid situation is in America. And here's some of the figures. Every 1 million Americans, almost 50,000 doses of opioids are taken every day. Per day, 50,000 per 1 million Americans. And that's 4 times the rate for those in the UK. Surprisingly, Canada was second on the list, or unsurprisingly, given some of the mind control programs going on up there. And they're 35,000 per 1 million Canadians per day. Now, it's stated sometimes, it's often, there are good reasons for taking opioids. Cancer patients use them for pain relief, and patients recovering from surgery using codeine and morphine, which are both opioids, just to give you an example. But it's not the only pain relief, is there? But they still continue to deny some of the homeopathic medicines. In fact, not only do they deny them, they actually kill them off, those who are pushing it. Now, during the survey, I wanted to find out more about this particular place, and maybe I'll have something for next week, because I'm astonished that this particular town hasn't been investigated more as to why. In the last 2 years, the town of Kermit, as in the frog, in West Virginia received almost 9 million opioid pills, according to a congressional committee, and yet just 400 people live in Kermit. 4.5 million opioid pills per year, and yet only 400 people live in that town. Smacks of a drug operation to me. Elephant in the room again. Now, nationally, opioids killed more than 33,000 people per year, and that's going up. But part of the problem in America is it's common for drug companies to court doctors in an effort to promote their products. Drug pushers don't have to look a bit like a tramp and run the back streets on bicycles pushing drugs. They come in suits as well. When you're a doctor in America, they call these people detailing people, salesmen. snake oil salesmen is the better term, are coming from the pharmaceutical industry, and for the past 4 years the US government has published the amounts paid by drug and device companies to doctors and teaching hospitals. The total in 2016 was $8 billion paid out to doctors and teaching hospitals, inducements. $8 billion. Those people should all be arrested, in my opinion, because they're running a drug syndicate. Now, more than 630,000 physicians had payments records recorded by the US government. This includes travel perks, research perks, gifts, speaking fees and meals. For example, Purdue Pharma, which makes OxyContin, a popular opioid painkiller, made almost 80,000 transactions in 2016, worth more than $7 million in inducements in total. That's what we're facing on that particular war. You can all go on about whether pot's good or not. It becomes irrelevant when people are taking legal drugs. That's doing them so much damage. Basically, they're creating a nation of apathy. And basically, that's what we've got. Everyone's too high or low on pills. It astonishes me here, the culture of pharmaceuticals. I've worked in houses and renovating and doing fixer-uppers and whatnot, and I go into American homes and I see the medicine cabinet and it's jam-packed, and then you've got places in the kitchen where it's jam-packed with pharmaceuticals. How and why? In the UK we had paracetamol or Anodin. That was your painkiller. An itch cream and a general sore cream. That was it. And yeah, here it's ram-packed. You know, I said this story before. It's all to do with the programming. With my eldest son, his very first girlfriend is an American girl, and she rang him up from the hospital, and he said, and he was in a panic that his girlfriend was in hospital, and he said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I've got a headache, so I'm going for an MRI scan because I might have a tumour." I mean, that's the type of programming that's gone on over decades in this country. Here, have some pills, that'll fix it. No, it won't. One of the things we've done with this show, with a number of people, very quietly, and I won't give names out, as we've encouraged them to ditch their pharmaceutical drugs. Some of them have got rid of all of them, or at least reduce them. The drug companies told you 90% of the drugs don't work on 60% of the people. So why do we take them? Seek out alternatives, please, because this is one way each and every American can change the system by throwing their drugs out and buying no more. 3.3 trillion a year they take off us and put a lot of people in debt that end up losing their homes because you got sick. No, we're sick for tolerating it. You know, billions given out to Israel. That could go to healthcare. Billions wasted on 900 bases all around the world. That could give us free healthcare. The Pentagon charging $450 for a toilet seat, amongst other rogue items. All these underground bases. Did we get asked whether we wanted underground bases? Again, billions spent on that. We could have had a free healthcare with that money. It's plenty of money. It just has to be redirected in a better way. This is probably the last story before we go into the break. This next news item could be a trigger that will send shockwaves right round the world. And it's happening this year. Not next year, not 2 weeks, this year. One of the world's top energy importers, China, is now set to roll out a yuan denominated oil contract as early as this year. Analysts call the plan announced by Beijing a huge move against the dollar's global dominance. And earlier this year, the Chinese government announced plans to start a crude oil futures contract, also priced in yuan and convertible into gold. We don't have any. Oops. The contract will enable the country's trading partners to pay with gold or to convert yuan into gold without the necessity to keep money in Chinese assets or turn it into US dollars. The new benchmark will reportedly allow exporters such as Russia, Iran, or Venezuela to avoid US sanctions by trading oil in yuan. Venezuela ditches the dollar for oil payments to dodge US penalties. Of course, Mr. Saddam Hussein wanted to trade oil in euros, and we all know what happened to him. Mr. Gaddafi also wanted to trade his energy in something other than the US dollar, and he was killed also. And now we've got China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia looking to escape the US dollar. Saudi Arabia was pushed to the de-dollarization crowd only recently by the US itself, which last year allowed survivors and relatives of the victims of 9/11 attack to sue the kingdom over its alleged role in the terrorist acts. There is decent motivation for the Saudis. They want to float the Aramco, and the Saudis are deeply in debt and are also running out of cash, believe it or not. And that's why the Bushes are struggling. And they wanted to do an APO, alternative public offering of Aramco, either on London or American exchanges, but they prevented from doing so on the legal actions of the 9/11 survivors, who pointed at the Saudis as the cause of 9/11 because you haven't done enough research. Well, that is going to tip balances of power and going to upset quite a few in the five-sided building in Virginia. and that's when the fun and games of unpleasant may unveil. You know, we have come a long way in many aspects, and the overall plan was to avoid violence which played out in the public. There's been many taken out behind the scenes. Just because they haven't announced it doesn't mean it didn't take place. And yes, I know people want proof, but the classic is looking at Clinton. Does that look the same to you? Clearly not. And we'll have news about Android shortly. Right, we're going to go into the break and have a couple of songs, and we'll be back with some op-ed pieces and some intel. Maybe this is fitting. Everybody's changing. Hi all, and welcome back to the second hour. Give me the strength and the courage to wash my illusions away, indeed. I pray we all get that. Once we get rid of the illusions, everything seems so much clearer. Right, let's get into some of the intel. There's not a vast amount this week. Everything's going hush hush for various reasons. Some good, some not so good. But this is what we've got for this week. And it largely is to do with the UK. And Android, aka Hillary, aka the entity formerly known as Hillary Clinton. Of course, we reported recently that she had fled America and is hiding out in the UK and being protected, because there's more than one group who have a bounty on her head because she's kind of pissed off too many people, and eventually those people get rather pissy and decide to fight back. And so Anne fled to the UK and is being heavily protected by the Knights of Malta over there. Of course, that particular group are never one to miss an opportunity, and while Anne is there, she is trying to coerce the House of Lords into trying to take over the UK, which is all designed to put the Rothschilds back in the game and back in control of the UK. So the UK media this week and the propaganda unit portion are now staging a play of how the Rothschilds came to power from rags to riches. And I'm hoping the people of the UK, I know there's many in the UK who listen to this show, if there's a screening of that Rothschilds play or whatever it is, go and block it. Block the screening and shut it down. Anywhere and everywhere it's screened. The reality is the Rothschilds have been in control of Britain for the last 200 years until the last couple of years, when they thought they were going to up sticks and move in with the bogus Chinese elders and fake dragons and run their empire from the east and shut down the whole of the EU. And that play would be one giant piss take on the people of Britain. As the Rothschilds are usurpers, top and bottom. They're not royalty, they're not bloodline, just a group of incestuous parasites. That's the top and bottom line of who and what the Rothschilds are. Incestuous parasites. Now, they rose to power on the back of a $20 million loan from the reptilian dragon families group in China back in the 1500s. Before then, they were nobody. Now, in reality, they're back to being nobody. It's just taken some certain people with badges on their shoulders a bit longer to realise. McFly. They then stole Britain. And this goes to a war between Britain and France, Battle of Waterloo, back in 1815. And the Rothschilds had runners, as they used to call them, going to and from with messages on horseback and boats and whatnot. And they got advance notification that Britain had won the war, but told the Brits they lost the war in France. They told the government and the stock market that Britain had lost the war. All the shares then collapsed. Of course, the Rothschilds had money, and they bought all the shares up for pennies in the pound. Then the real decision came through that Britain had actually won the war, and the stocks and shares went through the roof, which increased the Rothschilds' holding over the financial district of Britain. And basically they had control of large swathes of assets then, and then used them to leverage against Britain and ultimately gain control of it. The Rothschilds controlled the City of London, which is the world's financial district. Remember the quote by Mayor Amschel Rothschild, "Permit me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I care not who makes its laws." Right in your face. Basically, the Rothschilds had Britain by the balls. And for the best part of 200 years, carried on holding them by the balls until the last 3 or 4 years when the UK shut them out. Of course, it was reported in the Intel last year that they were trying to get back in, and the power in the UK told them to go and do one. Well, Android is now trying, along with the House of Lords people, they're all the pedos, by the way, are trying to stage a takeover of the UK and put Rothschilds back in. So what they're hoping to achieve is a faction power play and a takeover of the UK with the support of the international terrorist group known as the Knights of Malta. MI6 is also involved in it as well, threatening anyone who doesn't support insanity or have psychopathic tendencies. It's not just Langley, you know. They're all in it together. CIA, MI6, Mossad and KGB have all been working together for the last 70 years. Cold War? My ass. So the House of Lords, role in it. the Lord is Anna, is they're playing up to the Chinese elders with plenty of ass-kissing going on, both figuratively and literally, no doubt. And you just wonder how many times do the Chinese elders have already told these people and the Pentagon that they don't have any money, they don't have sufficient assets, and they don't have any power to run or implement anything. Again, McFly. And the reality is the Rothschilds are in big trouble. Big, big trouble. You see, if someone doesn't keep paying their bills, which they haven't repeatedly, sometimes people will react badly to that scenario. Time will tell. Tick tock, Mr. Rothschild. So, that's the intel for this week. There is other things going on, but I wasn't allowed to report for safety reasons and whatever else is going on. We take intel responsibly with this show. If there's some, I can put it out. If there is none, I don't. If I'm told not to, I don't either. It's far more important the safety of the people who are in positions, and there's many in positions, than outing intel on this show. It will get delivered when it's safe to do so, as we always do. Because unlike Mr. Wilcock, I won't get people killed by outing stuff. Didn't you, David? Anyway, we'll go on to some op-ed pieces now. And this is about prisons. It's only a small few pieces here. But basically, it's what we've already known in America. We are an incarceration country. But what most people didn't know is we are spending 3 times more on our prisons than on our schools. 3 times more on prisons than schools. What does that tell you? And America has imprisoned close to a quarter of the world's prisoners, despite the fact that crime is currently at an all-time low, and the US only makes up 5% of the world's population. Money to be made, you see. All prisoners are on the stock market. It just never ceases to amaze me the lengths people will go to make money. Boggles the mind. Another report that came out this week about civilian employees of the government are being armed to the hilt with guns, ammunition and military-style equipment, and are also authorised to make arrests and trained in military tactics, no doubt. Sorry, I was just getting some updates there. Amongst the agencies in the United States being supplied with night vision equipment, body armour, hollow point bullets, shotguns, drones, assault rifles and LP gas cannons are, wait for it, the Smithsonian Unit, the US Mint, the Health and Human Services, the IRS, the FDA, the Small Business Administration, the Social Security Administration, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Education Department, the Energy Department, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, and an assortment of public universities. It is stated that now reportedly more bureaucratic, non-military government of civilians armed with high-tech deadly weapons than US Marines. Who authorized this and why? That's a question every single American should be asking. Who authorized it and why? Again, imagine all the cost of that. And again, us mug Americans are paying for that. Do we need the Education Department to have military weaponry? Or the Energy Department? Or whoever the hell Bureau of Engraving and Printing is? Public universities. Understand the IRS, out of all of them, and maybe the Social Security Department, was heaven forbid of a government shutdown, which could be looming in 6 weeks' time. Then I'm sure the Social Security staff will want to protect themselves. And you've got 146 million Americans on benefits. And the IRS, I'd want to defend myself if I worked for the IRS, because when the American people have it drummed into their heads that we've been paying income tax illegally since 1933-34, yes, they will need protection. Unbelievable. There's a lot of stuff going on globally. I mentioned recently about things going on. There's currently marches in Brazil against the president. Marches going on in Barcelona over the Catalonia independence, which could get interesting. Marches in Chile over sexual harassment and gender discrimination. Marches in Israel over military draft of Orthodox Jews. Some of you have seen rather graphic and fairly hostile videos of the attacks on the Jewish people, because they had the audacity to say, we don't want to do your military draft. And we also got Kurdish protesters rallying outside the US Embassy in Germany, complaining about the US troops. And Chile have attacked the Argentine embassy over a missing detainee. There's many, many others, protests, marches ongoing. It's a sign of the people are tired of what they're being delivered. And that will increase. It will increase. The Vegas sideshow continues. News today. The alleged shooter's brother has been arrested for child porn on his computer. I'm not too sure why that's newsworthy, but again, it's another distraction. That the big focus of attention was that. It's the sleight of hand again. Well, in other reports, the hard drive of the alleged shooter has now been declared missing. Really? I wonder, did Mr. Paddock learn that from the Clinton group? He has a thing of making things go missing. Hard drives, emails, people. and elections as well. That went missing from her. Or perhaps he learned it from Adam Lanza, the alleged shooter in Sandy Hook, 2012, as his hard drive is also missing and his computer was smashed. All very clandestine agency tactics to me. These people must have known. You know, if you're a mass shooter, let's just put ourselves in the head, or try to, where you're going to bludgeon a number of people, you must accept the fact that the likelihood is you're not going to survive that incident, whether Mr. Paddock or Mr. Lanza did it or not. Assuming they both did, they both must have suspected that they wouldn't survive the event. So why would you smash the computer if you're going to be dead? Doesn't make sense, does it? Unless it's, like I said, clandestine tactics to me. Is the world going mad? Absolutely. Here's another example. And another example of the now not so hidden agenda that we were warning back in Cosmic Voice in 2013. Saudi Arabia has granted citizenship to a humanoid robot. Oh, I thought Anne was in Britain. Oh well, must be another one. This is the transhumanism program. It's getting you used to it. So, someone from Iraq who wants to move to Saudi Arabia largely can't get in because of the political overtones, but a plastic human can be granted citizenship. All very synthetic, isn't it? This is the transhumanism right in your face. I mentioned earlier about the movie Spectral, and for those of you who haven't watched it and want to find out about the soul trap technology, that movie covers it. Is it a coincidence it came out? Bear in mind it takes time to make a movie before they put it out. Is it a coincidence it came out 2 years after the soul trap technology was shut down? Make of that what you will. And yet again, the CIA, female CIA agent, was put in bad light, or poor light again. It seems to be a theme. Maybe they're trying to tell you something that this person's been telling you for a long, long time. The elephant in the room. And it showed you when they were going to shut down the machine to kill off the soul trap technology, the CIA agents wanted to keep hold of it because they said they could use it to their advantage. No, they were using it before. Them and the ones who pull their strings anyway. Another example of people making money in the most bizarre and heinous ways. And unfortunately, it involves Israel again. Another news item that came out today. The news item was about Israel, but make no mistake, it's not only Israel that's doing this. Every country is doing it. And the report was about harvesting organs from dead Palestinians. Now, I don't particularly just want to focus on that one or that country, because they were harvesting organs from all those South American kids last year. Thousands of them. You know, the ones that were coming in the trains going to Texas. They've also been harvesting the organs of the Syrian children that just happened to be mislaid from their parents in the exodus out of Syria. This is, literally, it boggles my mind the lengths people will go to make money. Is there no bottom pit of it? But when you've got a healthcare system like we have here, well, it's not a healthcare. It's a sick enhancement. So you then go and buy off the salespeople drugs. Not curing you. And when organs run from $90,000 to $230,000 a piece, and you've got people with no morals, then you have an organ harvesting program. And this is why we have to, what we the people can do, is shut down the American so-called healthcare system. All of it. Refuse their vaccines, refuse their drugs. Only in a dire emergency should you go into one of those places. And particularly if you're old, because the likelihood is you won't come out. This is again part of the agenda to eliminate the elder people, or elderly. They're doing it in Britain. Why? Because they've spent all the pension money. They're running in this country on credit at the moment. On the hope that their RV pays out. It won't. And eventually reality bites. Of course, who's going to suffer again? Yes, the same mugs again. The American people. Of course, we've got the other connection to the health service is the insurance people. What do they insure against? That you're not going to get sick? That your car's not going to crash? That someone's not going to steal your home? Notice they don't have insurance against banks stealing your home, do they? Funny that, isn't it? Or heaven forbid, you have an incident like we've had recently in Texas and Florida. Where you have premiums and it's 2% of the value of the house. So most people, the first $5,000 to $7,000, you're paying yourself. So why are you paying insurance? Because the mortgage people insist on it. Not because it's protecting yours, it's protecting their investment. because they own the house, whether you've paid for it or not. It tells you on the title. You're just a tenant. And we put up with all this shit. You're going to hear a lot, I imagine, over the next 6 months, you're going to hear a lot more about harvesting of organs. It was going on in Liverpool before I came to America in 2002. People thought it was an urban myth. It wasn't. There was people who got particularly drunk, woke up in a road the next morning and found one of their livers or lungs missing. Numbers of them. Like I said, if the bounty on those organs wasn't so high, there wouldn't be as much call. You got people selling in the UK, selling one of their lungs or their liver to make money. It gets me out of debt, one girl said. Really? It's just sad. Dalai Lama chimed in this week and voicing his concerns about the selfish, according to him anyway, and nationalistic direction the US has taken since President Trump took office. He stated America first direction under Trump sounds not very nice. You being a cabal agent, Mr. Dalai Lama, is not very nice. Since when has spiritual people got involved in politics? Unless, of course, you're part of it. Where are we? It's okay for time. Well, of course, this week is celebration, allegedly, in both America and European countries and Canada, called Halloween. Except it's not a celebration. It's a ritual event. And this is the night where the cabal wish to call in all the dark entities and spirits and actually get us to support it. The reality is Halloween Day was a day of mass human sacrifice by the pagans, derived from the Phoenician sacrifices to Moloch. Of course, those who are not familiar with who Moloch is, it's the owl in Bohemian Grove. That's the representation of Moloch. Now, Halloween, surprisingly to me and most others, has only really been celebrated, in inverted commas, the last 50 years or so, since it became the multi-million stroke billion industry it is today. But scary masks, scary costumes, horror makeup, zombies, monsters, witches and witchcraft and devil worshipping. Is this really what we wish for our children to partake in? And children knocking on doors for candy? Anywhere else, that would be classed as begging, would it not? Well, some people are going, well, it's just harmless fun. Well, is it really? So calling in the demonics is classed as harmless, is he? And for those who think it's harmless, you try telling that to the children who will be sacrificed on that date. But I don't think it's just harmless fun for them. Think about it. Now, the UFO community is kind of been splintered in many ways, deliberately. The experiences, the ones who are interested without agenda, and the ones who are interested with agenda. And the latest one to come forward, and there's a reason probably why he's come forward, is the previous one put forward to out it all. Mr. Wilcock and Corey Good have been exposed. And like all good assets, if they've been exposed, they bring new people out. And this is why suddenly some German by the name of Gerloff has come forward and announced he's another of the 20 and back programme. Except the cabal went further. They wheeled out a public figure, Tom DeLonge, Blink 182 or 192, whatever it is. Puppet. Now, before I get into his role, the reality is the cabal have lost control of the ET narrative because too many have stepped forward. Too many are now finding out the hidden, and they want to switch it back and put it under their control, where they feed you or feed us a pile of bullshit like the Corey Wilcock blue chicken crap. And DeLonge won't be any different. They want it over 50 years minimum, and they'll give you bits and thinking you're getting disclosure. No, you're not. You're getting more lies. Except this time they're going to monetize it. A commercial enterprise was the first thing Tom DeLonge said with disclosure. We the people have already paid heavily for hiding ET disclosure. We've paid for all the underground bunkers that you house tall greys and all kinds of other hideous looking ET creatures. Collecting your tech to play war games. Collecting the tech to mind control people on a massive scale. But in case you had any doubts, Mr. DeLonge explained, and I quote, "I've brought together an elite team from the CIA, DOD, and the former Director of Advanced Programs at the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works." Really? Am I going to believe those people? That list is almost as bad as Simon Park's MO. The CIA, the DOD, and Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. And we're expected to believe these people? The only one he didn't mention, funny enough, was NASA. It's another distraction. It's another way of taking money off you for disclosure you've already had for free from this show and many others. It also tells you the Corey Blue Chicken program has collapsed, because this is going to take it over. Celebrity, you see. Knowing the people follow celebrities. The people who experienced ETs, there's very few celebrities. So why do we need one to tell us what we already know? Now, I don't want to discredit the lad too much, because I think he has a lot to offer. But I'm going to talk a bit about Jordan Sather. Of course, he came out of the Corey's kids. Notice the girl's gone missing. After certain allegations were made at the ranch. But Jordan Sather, whether he's cut off Corey or not, you only have to look at some of his guests to question. John DeSouza, ex-FBI. Robert David Steele, ex-CIA. Do you get the picture? Why would a complete unknown suddenly get people who have worked for the CIA and FBI coming on his show? Again, does it make sense? Who's promoting them to get those type of guests? Robert David Steele refused to come on this show. I knew he would. The question I asked him to come on was rhetorical, because I knew full well he wouldn't come on. Because he knows full well who I am, and he knows who full well, because I outed one of his underlings, Neil Keenan. Yes, Robert David Steele looks after Neil Keenan. And when Keenan got exposed, who went over by his side? Robert David Steele. Has Keenan said anything relevant since? No, because he got shut down. So I hope Jordan gets away from Corey and the Covens, because that's who's operating Corey and Wilcock. Because for a young man, he does really well on his interviews. I like the idea that he brings guests on and lets them speak, unlike certain others in the community. I think it's the height of bad manners bringing a guest on and burbling all the way through it. But that's the way some people be. But I think Jordan has, he's a young man, and we need a lot of young people to push this forward. I hope he can free himself away from those that are pulling strings. If not, then he'll go the same way as Corey and Wilcock. But check out for yourself his guests. Does it make sense that a young 20-year-old who's hardly been around for more than a few months is suddenly getting FBI and CIA people on the show, unless something is promoting it? If you're listening, Jordan, step away, lad. You don't need those clowns. Right, where are we now? Oh, let's have a music break and then we'll have some questions in the final hour. And that's Chloe's phone. I'll go here. Right, where do we go now? Let's play this. Let's have some Keen again. And My Shadow.
It's time to make a start.
Hi all and welcome back to the final portion of tonight's show. We have the usual question and answers to go through. Where are we? Where do we start? I'm going to keep them all in one go. There's been a number of questions of who is Anu, Enlil and Enki. Maybe I can lump them all in one. Anu is the Lord. Yes, that Lord in the Bible. That's Anu. He is the leader of the Draco and has been in control here for 16,500 years, and his two offspring are Enlil and Enki. And the Draco reptilians, not the reptilians, two different species. They were part of what's known as the Anunnaki, but the original Nanunnaki, and they, as they always do, is take over and run it themselves. But the Anunnaki were part of, there was 5 different species, and they were part of it. Nephilim, offspring of the fallen angels. Elohim, same fallen angels, and the giants were a different race altogether. So I hope that answers your question. Who did Enki use to mix his own DNA to create or modify man? I'm not too sure that Enki did that, but I could, maybe Chloe might have more on that in next podcast. She knows a bit more about the Anunnaki than I do. And I think there was some other questions on the Anunnaki. Let's get them all out in one go. Is Enki and Lucifer the same being? No, but the Draco have been copying certain entities, creator gods from the past, and pacifying them, putting it out that they are the latest version or the original. So that's basically what the Draco have been doing. Because you heard about Horus and Ra and Marduk, all played by the same being. Ra being the Lord of One. Of course, we all know who promotes that type of channeling bullshittery. But the Lord of One, despite its concept about being love and light and all this stuff, is basically a soul harvesting program. That's why we on this show do not promote it. A soul harvesting program. Ra was part of the Draco Anunnaki. Lilith, conflicting on Lilith more so than Enki, Enlil and Anu. Some say she's good, some say it's not. I've got no knowledge either way on that, so, but I hope I answered sufficient with those answers. But maybe you should join Chloe's podcast and ask her a question on that, because she has got a lot more detailed knowledge and history and timelines on all those entities. Apologies to the person who asked this question. I meant to get back to you with the email. What do you recommend we do to re-establish our government centred under our state and federal constitutions? Now, initially I said it can't be done as yet, and the reasons is it will get thrown out, because the reason being is we're not under the original organic constitution. We're also not under the original proper American government. It is available for the first time in 140 years when people grow a set and step into it, and are also given the platform to do so. So all those re-establishing our governments can only be done when the clowns and foreign agents that are operating this country are removed, deleted, cancelled, and the new is put back in. Then there would be no need for individual states to do so, because it will come under the broad sweep of we will be under the organic constitution with an American government, not USA Inc. like it is currently, with our own national banks, not foreign agents like the Federal Reserve, and maybe our own American tax company. IRS has nothing to do with America. It's a collection agency for the Federal Reserve, which is foreign agents, foreign bank. Nothing to do with America. If I get any more info, I meant to get more detailed, but I think I've pretty much covered it there. But once we restore sovereignty to this country, that ends all the legalese, that ends the foreign agents, and that restores the 14th Amendment, title of nobility, which means that ends the bar program. All the lawyers, all operating under British law, British Accreditation Registry. That's what bar stands for. So when all that comes down, then we'll have what you're trying to achieve now. But I don't wish to. It may still be valid what you're doing, but under the current restrictions, it's nigh and impossible to get it through the court system which they operate, the government which they operate, and trying to mention that it comes under the original constitution when it doesn't. This is how the whole system in America is set up currently. Currently we have and operate under 4 different constitutions, none of which apply to the people, all of which apply to the District of Columbia, and is passed off to the states and to the people. You who do law know that these judges operate under DC law, maritime law, and not under law of the land, common law, natural law. So this is all being done at the highest levels. Discussions are ongoing about America regaining its sovereignty, which will restore the constitutions, which will delete the bar, delete the Federal Reserve, and repurpose the IRS. That's the day we all look forward to. Thomas, you talked about the story of us narrated by Morgan Freeman. He states that the best we can do is to find a balance between war and peace in one particular documentary. Can you please address that statement for the group and Morgan's connection to the powerful Freeman bloodline family? and the priority the THI organisation talked about in a book co-authored by Michael Bagent, Richard Lee and Henry Lincoln. The book was entitled Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and it offered historical proof that an organisation called the Priority of Zion was powerful and had existed since the time of the early Crusades. I don't know Morgan Freeman's connection to that particular bloodline family, but to find a balance between war and peace, at the moment we don't have a balance. War is necessary in an extreme situation only. We don't have sufficient, well, the people do, but I'm talking about how the governments operate, or the state departments that operate the governments don't have a necessity to go to war with anyone on this planet currently. All these wars are to make money and for land and resource grab. All of it. So we do have to find a balance between war and peace. War, to me, if I was running this country, the military would clean up the mess that they've created. All technology would be assessed. Is it beneficial to humanity? Yes or no? If it's not, it should be scrapped permanently. The Air Force can clean up the chemtrails. The Navy can clean up the oceans of the oil mess and the dumping that they've been doing. And the Army can clean up Afghanistan, Libya, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. And the engineers can come and fix this country. And then we have a global military where every country chips in and every country participates, and the only war of the future would be from outside invasion, and we protect this planet ourselves. And that's proper balance. The world should come to peace when you haven't got psychopaths thinking they own every square inch of this planet and all the resources. Those resources, as I keep saying, belongs to everybody. Not Rothschilds, not factions, not bloodline families or royalty. All of us. This is what we're doing with the Kingdom of Mana. Sangreal. We're all monarchs. And that doesn't mean the royal term. That's the ancient term. That means we are all entitled to sovereignty. As a sovereign, you can then have an equal vote with anybody. At the moment, we have an illusion of a vote, because it's not an election, it's a selection, apart from the last American one, when it was a choice of the lesser of the two evils. Doesn't mean to say that Trump might not come through and we might get what we've always wanted under Trump. But it wasn't the initial outset of what he was trying to achieve, which was to get Hillary into power, not him. Anyway, that's kind of going off track. So we do need a balance between war and peace. At the moment, it's all about war, and peace is declared non-productive. But there's a sign that the world now wants peace, and they're also prepared to go to war in some countries to get it. mentioned about the work that's gone on in a previous story of us by Morgan Freeman in Ireland, between the Catholics and the Protestants. There's much work being done to end that nonsense. And the wars in Rwanda. The ones who murdered that woman's husband and children are now working with her. So peace can come out of war. Alliances, strange as it may seem, can come out of war. There's lots of Palestinian and Israeli people who are tired of the death and destruction from both sides, and they're trying to work together. Unfortunately, they've got a despotic government that they need to remove. This nutty asshole is not interested in peace. It's just land grab and division. And that whole area, that's gone on for tens of thousands of years. That's the original space of the Anunnaki. That's why there's always war there. There was war between their family. Marduk got pissy because other family members were given strategic regions, and he felt that he should have had region 1, the important one. So yet again there's fighting, brother against brother. You've heard all that in the Bible. Same thing. It's in the Bible because it's about the same people. They just changed the names around. So yes, we do need a balance, but war should only be a last resort, and it certainly shouldn't be played out on this planet unless we're invaded from outside. All our military expenditures from every country should be a collective attempt to defend this planet from exterior invasion. There should never be war on this planet again, once the clowns who think they own everything are removed once and for all. I watched a video recently and Kent Dunn referred to us as holograms and the planet as one giant hologram. Quite why you listen to him is beyond me. He offers nothing but bullshittery. Period. There's portions of it can be seen as a hologram, not all of it. That's also coming down. In essence, it already has. It's only the thought form that's keeping it together. But as more and more people wake up to reality, that thought form collapses. I would turn Mr. Kent Dunn off and go and spend some time in nature. It's far more useful. There's a question for you all. All about holograms and flat earth programs. Why isn't there a flat moon program? If the earth's flat, why isn't the moon flat? These are the things I think of during the day. I told you I had no life. Thomas, are we still under a matrix? My sky still looks like it's computer generated. Well, yes and no again. In essence, that's collapsed. The construct's collapsing. There's still echoes of it, but it's not like it was. And the sky looks like it's computer generated because they're using mirror tech. Again, that will come down. But never take the blue or red pill. People often forget they have another choice. Neither. Miss Manor stated that we are all equal. Do you know where they stand on the theory that a large percentage of the populace could be synthetic? They're of the same belief, perhaps not to the levels that I'd mentioned previously. I think it's more a third, whereas I said 10 to 15 were non-synthetic. So that's where they stand on it. I hope they're right and I'm wrong. Where are we next? I keep feeling a small painless surge of electricity in the back of my neck going out laterally. Any thought? Been really hooked to higher self lately. Well, that may explain it. You've answered your own question. Just make sure. I know this particular person is having issues to double up and get more imaginative with your shielding and what you put in it. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. Think about that. What events must take place before we move forward as a species? I keep hearing events must have to take place first. Before we move forward as a species, we've got to end the programming of the people. That's the biggest event and the biggest hurdle as well. Because even those in the awake group still have varying degrees of programming. Election comes up, I must vote, otherwise I'm wasting my vote. No, you're actually wasting your time and your vote in voting for the first place. We didn't choose the candidates, they did. So we're only voting for their candidates. So how is that beneficial, going to be, hopefully in any way beneficial for us? So we have to take our own personal responsibility and elect people we want, not what they give us. Everyone has to go through the dark night of the soul. Some of the biggest lies are the ones we tell ourselves. And this is why the masks of illusion are coming down. It's going to expose you for who and what you really are. If you don't like that version of you, you have an opportunity to change it. But you'll need to do it quickly. To move forward as a species, kind of plays into the last answer. We have to end war and land grabs, greed. Once we get the populace in a personal responsibility mode, where you take responsibility for yourself and those around you, operating under the golden rule and observing natural law of which there's only four rules, in a caring and sharing manner rather than that's mine, that's mine, that's mine. It's all about me, 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 and I. No. It's about us. It's about them, and it's about we. That's when we start to move forward as a species, where the governments in every country are operating for and by the people and for humanity, and also for the planet. So even the few suggestions I've made there, you see how much work needs to be done. So even if the cabal step down at midnight tonight, it's not over by any means, because we've still got a load of people who don't act and behave in the right manner, who are not personally responsible. We have to cut this selfish, all about me, consumeristic society. Morgan Freeman in one of those shows mentions America will grow up as a society the day they feel empathy for a dead Iraqi soldier as they would one of their own. A death is a death and a sad event, whichever country you come from, and the sooner we realise that and implement it and go forward with it, that is when we start becoming an adult species and not the children that we are currently. So we will have an enormous amount of work, all of us, not just governments, the people. You want a peaceful planet and everyone living in harmony with nature and the planet. It's the people that drive it. Politicians can change everything they like and cancel all the heinous stuff that they've propagated on us. But if we don't change as people, we just carry on fighting each other and competing. The cabal stepping down will have been a complete waste of time, because all we're doing is replicating their poor behaviour. This is why the cabal are failing now. Why? Because they're replicating, or trying to, or haven't got the intelligence, thankfully, trying to replicate what the Draco, the parents and the Covens have been doing. They didn't step into the role. So are we going to step into the void of the cabal by replicating their behaviour with bogus titles and self-importance? I hope not. Where are we next? I've been seeing a number of reports of human trafficking, with Michigan being the number 2 state where people are going missing at an alarming rate. The media is not reporting on this. No, they won't. And is anything being done by the higher ups to stop this? And do you know what is happening to them? Often a white van is involved. Yes, there is a lot going on to prevent human trafficking. As I understand it, it's much reduced to what it was. A fairly drastic reduction. I don't have the actual figures, but also is told there has been a large reduction in it. A large reduction in the sex trafficking also. There's certainly been a reduction of the ritual events. And so that's an improvement, but we need to eradicate it altogether. But while you've got people who are willing to pay X amount of thousands of dollars for somebody's organ, whether they're dead or not, you'll always have people who want to make that money. So what is happening to them is ritual sacrifice, sexual slavery, mind control programs, organ harvesting. They're the four main things that the people go missing. And the white van makes a change from the black vans. Maybe the agencies have swapped colour. But they're involved, they always are. Aren't we the fallen angels? We have fallen down in consciousness and also shooting stars as we rise up in consciousness. No, we're not the fallen angels. Humanity has lowered in consciousness. Yes, there's been an improvement. But you listen to some of the stories in Just Tonight chat. Organ harvesting and ritual sacrifice. It's just heinous. $8 billion given out to force doctors into selling their drugs that they know doesn't cure people. And at the centre of it all, largely, is all down to money. What creates crime? The haves and the have-nots. Too many have-nots creates more and more crime. And yet, bizarrely, in a strange way, the crime rate has gone down in the US at a time when we've been in a recession for the last 9 years. That's going against the grain. Maybe it's a sign that the people are changing for the better. It's long overdue. Angels, are they a species all their own with their own world? No, they're not. Or do they just do the bidding of the Creator when needed? The Creator created angels and the demons. Balance. Now the story goes in the past, which again can't be proven, but as I study, there was an imbalance of angels created. And what happens when there's an imbalance? Certain angels fell. It's all about that clock again, the pendulum, 45-55. It's acceptable in either range. But when you create an imbalance, nature has a way of balancing it back, unless there's a particularly nasty virus, which is what we had in this U-inverse. So there was 13 sets of angels created, and then there was more which shouldn't have been. And then certain ones got corrupted by interacting with certain species, and that led to certain ones falling. Certain ones got blamed for that when they shouldn't have been. Always somebody pointing the finger at somebody else. No one holds their hands up and go, that was my mistake, unless they're ISIS. They seem to admit they've done everything. So I hope that answers the question anyway. Can clones be arrested? I would suggest no. But then they'd have to announce that they were a clone to not be arrested. So we get disclosure either way. Does our conscious awareness get swiped at every reincarnation? And if so, how can we ever progress? Yes, it does. Your memory gets wiped. And you're thrown back in. It's an earth recycling battery harvesting plant. And that's what has been going on for thousands of years, but is now at an end. So there's no memory wipes and soul traps and then being pushed back to earth as of the last 3 years. So, you know, people say certain things haven't happened. They have, on a massive scale. Can it be proven? Well, you'll have to die and find out first. But death is just a beginning. Part of the problem with religion is they've made us all fear death. There's nothing else. No, there's nothing else for them and their life longevity, so they won't go back to source, so they can continue their skullduggery, anti-life. And this is what they're trying to achieve with the transhumanism, so they can carry on forever. Ultimately, that'll fail also. So the reincarnation soul trap tech is now gone. Can we incarnate back on Earth after all this madness is over, and is that why there are very few souls left? Yes, you can. I suspect many may go back to where they came from. So the reality is most here are refugees. And yeah, we complain about illegal aliens. Again, that sort of thinking has to change to go back to the earlier question. What has to take place before we move forward as a species? We have to start thinking and acting different. As we carry on the same way, we're going to continue the same mess, only worse. Will Jeff Sessions make a move on Uranium One Hillary Clinton issue? Well, apparently it already has. Of course, most in certain elements of the government were aware of that because we exposed it 2 years ago. Hitler sold all the uranium to Putin and Russia, and yet has the audacity to mention and pay for agents to dig dirt on Trump and Russia. Of course, she denies all knowledge of it. Maybe she gets a memory wipe. Maybe so often seems that way. Personally, I'd rather press delete on that entity altogether, clone or otherwise. So that will come out. I have a feeling there'll be a lot more coming out on the entity known as Android. You can't carry on pissing people off all the time and get away with it. Are there any new numbers to report on the UN order to fire, arrest, etc., those associated with the Rothschilds after the Rothschilds made threats against the UN a few weeks ago? I've got no more numbers. I know it's still ongoing. And suddenly why you're seeing, I mentioned in a recent show, that you're going to see a lot of named people, presidents, former presidents, prime ministers, heads of state, being brought into court under fraud and corruption when it's really something else. Of course, Mr. Ahmadinejad from Iran is another one to add to the list. I think I've done about 8 or 9 in the last three shows. So that's kind of what's going on. They're being put through the courts and dealt with in a quiet sort of way. Is there an October surprise, and if so, what was it or what will it be? I hope not, because it will be another false flag event. Any update on the People's Club? I thought I saw a new website. No, it was a new Facebook page that was an error. There's no real updates except once certain clowns are removed and once certain people grow a set in the corridors of power in this country, then the funds will be released for the People's Club and we'll be up and running. Do you know if there's any truth in the theory of Ireland being the original Holy Land? Some bits. Of course, there's a good book, Ireland, the Land of the Pharaohs. Now, it's suspected that the Exodus was not from Egypt, but the Exodus was to Egypt from Ireland. Of course, the Irish are also connected to the Catalonians, as they both have share the same ET species that where they originated from. That's why they think the difference. That's why the powers that think they are, anyway, are trying to crush the Irish. The Vatican Church has crushed Ireland for the last 400 years. In league with Dutch kings, William of Orange, bogus, under the pretense that there's they're fighting a different religion in Protestants. Of course, Protestant is not a religion. It is what it says, Protestant. They were Catholic people who were protesting against the corruption and fraud and crimes of the Roman Catholic Church, not a separate religion. Now, Ireland was also fairly close to the island, IS land, of High Brazil, which was a higher end society, very spiritual group, and also had a lot of technology in the ancient past. Of course, that island no longer exists, although there is evidence below the water. You can see maybe that was part of the Atlantis, likely a part of the Atlantis time. But if you read the book Ireland, the Land of the Pharaohs, which is a free PDF online, you'll get more knowledge of what's gone on in Ireland. Of course, the Queen of Scotia is buried in Ireland in Tralee Bay. Why would the Queen of Scotia be buried in Ireland? That's where she's from. Of course, the Queen of Scotia is where Scotland got its name from, but that was Scotialand. In fact, Ireland was called Scotia before its current name, and the people of Ireland were seafaring. That's why they ended up in what's now known as Canada with Nova Scotia. Nova means new, New Ireland. So there's enough there for the Irish people to research. They were a higher end society, and unfortunately certain kings and queens and houses decided they would shut down their history, like they did with the Aboriginals, like they did with the Native Americans, so they can write their story, not ours. Is Mother Earth now in the 5th or 6th dimension, which is the highest dimension we can go at this time? No. There's elements of a change in vibration that may suggest we may be partially in the 4th, but not all the way clearly. Is Hitler to England escaped? Yes. Like I said in the intro, she has a bounty on her head by a number of different groups who have had enough of that particular group's shenanigans, and they want to take her out. So she's fled to Britain to get protection from the Knights of Malta goons. Let me see. I've answered that one. I'm doing a sort of a review of sorts. All the talks a new person should listen to bring themselves to this present current understanding. The ones listed at thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. Pretty much, if you want to know what about the ET side of things, or past history, about the human form, about illness and disease, about the factions, about the Illuminati families, then those bigger shows are all there. That covers the basics of what is going on, like an overview really of the different aspects of what's going on this planet. Future of Humanity, the Shane show, the faction show, the Illuminati shows, the Savali shows, the Levashov shows. It covers pretty much all the aspects. We have probably one more major show to do that I'd like to do at some time. That'll cover the financial. But time's not on my side at the moment, and that will probably complete the current that set of special shows, as we say, and it gives people a good overview. There's an unusual stillness and calmness in the air. Has something changed or shifted? Everything is changing. Certain things have shifted and certain things haven't. There is an uneasy calm ongoing currently, which can be unnerving, but it also gives you a chance to regroup yourself. You know, we've kind of been bombarded with information this year, which again was forecast at the start of the year. We would get it from all angles, and I think most would agree the stuff that's come out this year is mind-boggling. Even on the mainstream media, they're covering pedophilia and certain false flags. So, and there's been a lot to take in. There's also been a collapsing of certain programs within the alternative media that's been exposed heavily this year, and more people are seeing through it, like the Corey Goat, Wilcock and the Blue Chicken Brigade. I think most people are now seeing through it. That's why Corey is not promoted anymore. So they brought Mr. DeLonge forward to tell you a pack of lies and tell you about bullshit in Antarctica to distract. And in the meantime, you're going to pay for it. Well, don't. Just don't. You know, there's many of us in the alternative community who have campaigned long and hard about charging for knowledge and the truth. But it's up to us in the awake community to observe that and go, you know what? I'm not paying for that. If it's someone from the CIA, the DOD, and other rogue organisations, do you really think we're going to get some truth out of them people? Because they're the ones that have been blocking it. They're the ones that the people may turn on when the full disclosure really breaks out. We've already had disclosure, but I'm talking about the mass disclosure. So don't buy into it, because they're not going to tell you anything that you don't already know or you haven't already heard from this show and many other shows. Because if the Tom DeLonge thing doesn't get off the ground, that'll be the best thing no more, because that's the people going, you know what, we're not buying your bullshit. Because rest assured, if that takes place and no one signs up for it, the powers that be have a massive, massive problem, because then they have no choice but to out more disclosure. Because they'll know that people haven't fallen for their bullshit side show distraction. Right, we're going to wrap it up now. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Much to ponder on again. Much to think about again. Some mildly disturbing bits. A lot of positive bits as well. It all depends on your own particular mindset at times. Yes, this can get heavy. It gets heavy for me at times. But we have overall made large strides. I know people would like to see more evidence of it. Well, the evidence to me is you're all still alive. The reality is they wanted us all dead long before now. And talking about dead people, I'm going to play the last song for someone who died last year, last November. Except some websites are announcing that he died this week. So the last song will go out to Mr. George Soros, who died in November of 2016. So we'll play that last song for him, because that's exactly what he is. Anyway, this has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name is Thomas Williams. I will be back next Thursday, unless I have another guest for an evening with Thomas on Sunday. As it stands now, we don't. So, maybe. Anyway, bye for now. This is for Mr. Soros, because he is dust in the wind.